Okay, so as I was saying, these are technical drawings of styles. Okay, so you can see how all of this, like, they're not as dramatic and wild as our fashion illustrations. They are entirely about communicating style information. Okay, so you could actually literally put this together, send it to a contractor, or you could sew it up yourself. So drawing can develop your ability to observe, allow your creative mind to explore, and visually communicate ideas. Your sketchbooks will become the place for you to dream, play, work, develop your creativity, and learn. And that is my biggest goal as an educator in this class, is for you to become comfortable and really excited about the idea of visual information as a form of journaling, as a form of idea generation, as a form of creativity. Okay? That, because I love to draw and I like, visuals. I'm a very visual person, so pulling it all together in a sketchbook really always makes me happy, and I hope that that will also work for you too. Okay, so tips for successful drawing. Surrender and trust. The drawing is turning out the way it is supposed to. Give into it and keep going. Don't stop. Okay, don't erase. I don't bother with an eraser generally. It's moving backwards. Keep moving forward. Incorporate your mistakes into the drawing. Never say I can't draw. It is negative language, because you can draw. Again, if you can write your name, you can definitely draw. So here we have some of the examples of, I just love looking at old drawings because it affects, like this is, I believe, medieval, so it's European after the Renaissance. And I just love the way creative people express themselves and look at the world. We're going to be talking about perspective later in the term, for sure. This is a one-point perspective drawing, and I'll go into what that means later on in the term. This is just a great drawing. I like the fact that this is such an observation about nature, about being in nature. This is a quick sketch. This is a much more detailed drawing, and this would be for a painting. Throughout history, the real reason that most people drew was in preparation to make more detailed paintings. If you were making a portrait of somebody, and these things were very expensive, you would be painting them on wood. Materials were expensive, so you wanted to make sure that you were working from a drawing that was very accurate and that your client was happy with before you went into actually drawing it. So this wasn't just because people liked to draw, it was because they were developing portraits, which was one of the main reasons people bought art. I mean, they wanted portraits of themselves, they wanted portraits of religious figures. I'm going to show you a lot of historical art in our history class, and you will see what I'm talking about. The fact that these drawings are amazing is almost external to the fact that they were used for a specific function. It's only been in the last 100 years or so that people have really valued drawing in itself. This is by Raphael, and it's one of his studies for one of his Madonna paintings. And you can see how quick it is, but how much information is there, and what a wonderful little sketch it is. This is a weird one. In France, in the mid-1800s, early 1800s, there was this whole science thing around comparing people to animal faces and stuff, and they were trying out if certain types of facial shape made someone more predisposed to being like a criminal. It was a very weird exploration, and so that came from that. Pay attention to this fellow. He's going to show up in our art history lectures. Okay, so this sad guy has a story attached to him, which we'll be talking about later in the term in the FST120 class. This is a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci, another one of my favorites, one of my favorite artists. And this is recent. There's a website called DeviantArt, and some of it's terrible, but some of it's amazing. And it's basically like mostly really creative student work. And so you're welcome to go check that out as well, because they have some beautiful drawings on there. Okay. So I want to talk about an artist this week, Dürer, Albrecht Dürer. And you do not need to take notes on this, and this is not going to be, you will not be tested. This is entirely for own information. Tomorrow's class, you will need to know who I'm talking about. You'll need to be taking notes on the lecture, but for today, Dürer is really just here because I love his drawing, okay? So he was in Nuremberg in Germany in the late 1400s to early 1800s, and he made this self-portrait when he was 22. So it shows the style of the time very nicely. It is a painting, it's an oil painting. But I love his drawings because he had an incredible sensitivity to form, and he was an excellent draftsperson. You know, he really knew how to draw well, and these were all drawings that were used to develop into paintings. So again, the idea of you're commissioned to do a portrait, you come up with these sketches and drawings beforehand, so the client will be happy. This is a very famous image of Dürer's. He did this praying hands woodcut. So it was a print that was made from a block of wood, and this was the drawing for it. And it's like in every house. And if you, I used to live in Amsterdam in the early 90s, and this was every grandma in in Holland had a picture of the praying hands by Dürer up on the wall. So these drawings, we're going to talk about near the end of the term, the idea of gray paper. And gray paper not only uses pencils for darkness, it uses a white chalk for the lightnesses. So it gives you twice as much information, and it was very common during the Renaissance and the Baroque eras to draw this way, because it gave you a lot of information if you were making a painting after. Same here, you see how all the highlights, that would be done with light colored paint in your painting. Okay, so pay attention to this drawing, these two, because they're going to come up later in the lecture in a painting we're going to look at as well, which is my favorite Dürer painting. So remember this, it's significant. One of his nature studies, fantastic. This was done with some ink and watercolor and drawing. These are his woodcuts. So these were basically prints that were done out of carved wood. You can see the amazing detail in them. These are some of his paintings, because he's mainly known as a painter and a printmaker. Like the woodcuts and the paintings were what Dürer was most famous for. That's him very young, so I'd say probably early 20s again, so he's around most of your ages in this painting. This is Charlemagne, who was a famous medieval figure. Okay, so this is our last slide of the drawing lecture today, and it's called Jesus with the Doctors, I believe, or Christ with the Doctors. And the painting is about a story in the Bible where all of these doctors had this patient, this person who was unable to communicate because he was deaf and he was blind. Okay, now you'll notice that the hands are touching, and it is because Jesus is communicating with them through touch. And I love the sensitivity of this. I like the fact that it shows about human contact, and I think it's just a phenomenally interesting work considering it was done in the around 1500, where there wasn't the framework around disability that we understand today. Like, they would lock people up who had developmental issues. They, like, it was not a sensitive, tolerant society to people with disabilities. And I love the fact that this painting is so opposite of that. It is all about communicating in a way that somebody can actually listen, right? And so this painting for me is just the bomb. I love it. So I think it's a great way to end the lecture today. And does anybody have any questions?